Recording.
Hi, I'm Jim Dragun. I'm here to yell at the world about what's wrong with the mental health industry.
Hi, I'm Patrick. It's the first recording of the Yelp the World podcast. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Jim Dragon. He is a resident mental health counselor. He's a bit of a cynic, and he's here to talk about the mental health industry. Jim, thanks for joining me tonight.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, and mental health is one of those things that means a lot to. I mean, both you and I, as people who've I know have dealt with it. My family has a bunch of people who have struggled with it. I know your family has as well. And with your background, you actually have some more interesting insights into it than the average person would. So I think it's a really great way to start off this series that I want to use to talk about industries, passions, and things that are affecting people out there that they may not know about on such an in-depth level.
Nice. Hopefully, I can help with at least some of the mental health things that people don't know are going on.
Right. So, basic information for those who don't know, the mental health industry is something that has gotten a lot more attention over the last 20 years. You see a lot more stories about what's going on with, people with depression, the suicide rate being as high as it is. Professional athletes are now talking about it, so of course it's part of the mainstream news now. But that doesn't mean what's going on is all that rosy, and I think you're seeing a lot of it coming out now in society with what's going on with all the police brutality, because a lot of police are having to perform mental health tasks out in society, and that really ends up with a lot of these people getting sent to places like the one you work in.
Yeah, I've had the police at my residence 3 times in the last year and a half or so.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what it's like in a residential mental health? I mean, what would you call it? An institution? Just a
Uh,
residence?
so I work up in New Hampshire in a community mental health agency. So we have an independent living facility, which, for lack of a better term, people would consider a group home, even though it's kind of different. What we have is a bunch of apartments that two people share. They're double occupant. We have male and female, just not sharing the same apartment.
Makes sense.
Um, they're free to come and go as they please. They don't have to do anything. Basically, they're just saddled with severe and persistent mental health issues that are way above and beyond the average person's. Everybody's going to experience depression and anxiety. The people in the residence that I work at are all suffering from like severe bipolar with psychotic breaks and severe schizophrenia that's not an acute attack, it's lifelong, or severe with a lot of auditory or visual hallucinations.
That's pretty
um,
intense.
I will say the most eye-opening thing for me working there, especially at first, um, society, media, movies, I mean, anything you want to go. Um, People that are mentally ill, specifically people that are schizophrenic, are portrayed as being dangerous and or violent.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think of when I hear the word schizophrenic is like Woody Harrelson in Natural Born Killers.
Right.
It's someone
Um,
that's a quote unquote psychopath. Which knowing more now as somebody who's been in college, I know that's not true. But continue.
right. But even with the education, they have command hallucinations at times where there are voices telling them to do violent things,
Right.
to kill people, or they mean very disturbing things. And as much as that happens a lot, um, these are the kindest people I've probably ever met. None of them have a violent history, and none of them have violent streaks. Nothing. Um, so that was kind of eye opening for me to know that I'm working with some of the one step away from being in an institution. New Hampshire only has one hospital for all mental health, and it's only got like I think 250 beds, something like that, for a state with a population of 1.3 million.
Yeah, that doesn't
So
seem like it's enough.
And they tout that as a good thing because back in the days before Reagan, when he took everybody out of the homes, they had 2,500 beds, which I agree is too much. 250 is nowhere near enough.
Well, right,
Currently, we
but
have
just because you have a amount of capacity to be able to fill doesn't mean you necessarily need to fill that capacity. But being under capacity seems like a much more severe problem, at least in my head.
um,
Logically thinking.
yeah, you're right on the money. If you have a severe mental health issue, I can't speak for what it is right now, but I know last year at about this time, I knew a girl who was sitting in an emergency room hallway for 2 weeks before there was a bed open at the state hospital for her.
Jeez.
So, like, there's one problem. There's literally since Reagan, they've cut back so many beds. That there's not enough appropriate places for people.
Now, is this just a New Hampshire thing, or is this something that we're seeing nationwide as well?
I wish I could speak for the whole nation there. Unfortunately, I can only speak for New Hampshire. I do have friends that work in mental health in other cities that they say semi the same thing. I think New Hampshire is a little bit more of an extreme case. I think we're taken to the take that idea to its like logical conclusion, and you're going to end up with New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, and I know that, state by state, it's how things are controlled a lot by the government. I know New York is a state that is a little more well equipped to handle
Yeah.
mental health. I hate to say it, but a lot of it does seem to break down on how far towards the progressive scale your state government leans towards.
Absolutely. There's very little argument to that. I can say in my entire agency, I've met one conservative. One.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like my current position as an educator. You don't see a whole lot of conservatives in education. That doesn't really match
No.
up. But that's
Yeah.
probably another story for another day. Although it
Yeah.
does speak to, I mean, you said Reagan, who is kind of the founder of the current conservative movement. If you look at it, to his
Yeah.
current disciple and our current president, Donald J. Trump, things like mental health and things that are considered education, things that are considered to be more progressive, do seem to get more cuts, more pullback.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're in the middle of a really, I've never imagined I would see such a polarized climate in this country. Every issue seems to be either conservative or liberal, and there's not much like there's no more middle ground. If you try to walk in the middle, if you try and walk in the middle, you're labeled by one group as the other, and the other as the yeah. It's not a good time to be a free thinker.
It's really not.
No.
I could definitely go on a sidetrack about this, but I did just find
Oh, I could too.
a study, trend in psychiatric inpatient capacity in the United States in each state from 1970 to 2014. It was performed in Alexandria, Virginia by the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. And it does seem to vary pretty widely from state to state.
Yeah.
Looking at a map here of capacity in 2014, New Hampshire is on the low side per 100,000 population in your state. You have, it looks like 67 to 85 beds per 100,000, which seems a little high for the number you have. But
That's that's
worse. Texas, South Carolina, Georgia. So this is a nationwide problem. Even California, a state that you would think would be pretty progressive. 26 to 50 psychiatric inpatient beds per 100,000 people in California. So, I mean, it does seem to be a nationwide problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to like pretend to have an answer as to what the right number is. There's definitely a problem that you have of when there's too many beds, we start packing people in there that probably shouldn't be in there.
Well, and costs go up,
Yeah.
administration,
So
overhead, and all that.
yeah, it's like I don't want to say that I know the answer to this, but at least from the ground, it seems that somebody shouldn't have to wait 2 weeks for a bed. That
Right.
that is always like the first time I heard that as a thing, it really bothered me. But it doesn't seem to really be a thing that gets talked about in my agency, at least, or among people that I work with.
Well,
It
I
gets
think that's
mentioned here
also
and there.
a nationwide problem. You do see in general, with so much noise out in the world, it's really hard for certain topics to get through unless they're those big blockbuster ones. In this case, it's ones that affect more of the average human, the average citizen, such as depression or an eating
Yeah,
disorder, stuff that's not quite on such a high end level that requires that constant care. But it does
yeah,
seem to kind of tie into another general trend we're seeing is we don't take care of those people that do need our help the most, from our veterans to, like you're saying, our mentally, the people that have the really severe mental health disorders to people that
yeah,
are severely sick.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's
Well, on that note, we kind of as a nation just got to really decide who we are.
right.
And
Are we
I hope what
compassionate
we,
or are we
yeah, I
egotistical?
hope what we are now is not who we really are, and we get a little bit better. But I can't say, before I say everything that's wrong that I see with mental health. One thing that I've seen from like when you and I were kids, there's a less stigma
Yes.
around mental health, even inside the mental health industry. Um, there used to be a lot of stigma about certain diagnoses. There still are about a few, but it has come down a lot. Um, all of the training nowadays focuses on person-centered, so you don't say I work with a schizophrenic. You work with a person who has schizophrenia.
That's a
Um,
much better way to label somebody.
there's there has been a big focus on language, on trying not to isolate and stigmatize people, and like that's good. That's great. Uh, Another big change that is good, but also raises a lot of problems at the same time is, again, when we were younger. I mean, you're only talking 20 years ago when we were younger, maybe 30. Um,
Right. Not
if
that
you
old yet.
were if you were mentally ill, you weren't going to work in the mental health industry.
No. No, not at all.
That door has been broken down. There are people that have severe schizophrenia that work in the field. So that door has been opened, and for the most part, it's a good thing.
It's kind of hard not to think
There's
that somebody that would have that sort of ailment wouldn't have insights into it that others that could never
abs
experience it would have.
right, and that's absolutely true. On the flip side of that, one of the bad things is you occasionally attract some personalities that, for whatever reason, aren't a good fit, to put it gently.
I think that's
Um,
every profession. I think that's human nature at this point, my friend.
yeah, personality disorders. I think I've seen a couple of undiagnosed personality disorders working in the field.
No, all fields.
Yeah,
It all
yeah.
counts.
I feel like we gravitate towards each other in this field a little bit because I will also say, to anybody listening, you can be diagnosed. Anybody in the world can be diagnosed with mental illness. Give me an hour with you, and I'll find something. Um, it's like, and that's not. I don't want to say that as,
No,
Granted,
I mean, I get
I
where you're
am a
coming
cynic,
from.
but if you think that, oh, this isn't a topic that is going to affect me, or no, it affects you. It may not affect you as much as it affects the people I work with. Um, but eventually, somebody you know, your family, your kid, they're gonna be in this industry. Like, I don't think anybody gets through their whole life without having some impact from this.
Right.
So like, it's everybody can be diagnosed. So it's something that I go through with some of my clients. Some of the ones that are a little bit more lucid than others. A lot of the time, we'll say, "Well, I'm not like the rest of these people." Yes, you are. I'm like the rest of these people. They're all people.
Well, I
Um,
mean, that's kind of part of all of being. I mean, I wonder if it's like that in other countries because so much of America is about being an individual. So you're
yeah,
always told from a young age, like you're special, you're unique, you're a snowflake. And now it's so funny
yeah,
how being a snowflake has turned into an insult. Like we've all been
yeah.
told we were snowflakes since we were very young,
Right.
very young.
Yeah. We've definitely had a focus on individuality.
Hmm.
Um,
Really
so,
controversial.
like I was saying, certain personality types get drawn into mental illness, and in general, they're the same personality types that get drawn to nursing. Um, so people that have huge hearts that just really, really want to help, um, like good-natured people. Like I don't really, and the ones that are actually not good-natured people, like myself, usually burn out really, really fast. Um, I don't give a shit about anything typically, so everything rolls off my back, so I can be me and not really burn out on the job very quickly. But in general, most people who are cynical or have a hard time with failure or just don't have a very optimistic point of view don't usually last very long in this industry, from what I've seen.
I could see that.
Uh,
I think I would have a tough
on
time with it.
I mean, you also have to be able to deal with. Most of my clients are older. I've only been working for this agency for going on like 3 years now, and I've already had 4 people die.
That's
Two
awful.
from yeah, one from old age, two from cancer, and one from renal failure. Um, it happens, and especially in this industry, a lot of people that have that severe mental illness also have some developmental disabilities as well.
Well, and the
Um,
medications are. I mean, I don't know about what you've seen, but it feels like, and this is just me being kind of random, but it feels like all pharmaceutical drugs, if you take them long enough, will do damage to some part of your body. You know, be it your brain, your kidneys, your liver, your heart, your lungs. Like
yeah.
everything's
I
trying to
mean,
kill us.
pretty much to be fair, the only thing I know of that you can take long term that has literally no effect on you, and this is not an advocation in any way, shape, or form, but is heroin. If you don't overdose, it does nothing to you long term. That's the only thing I know of. Everything else damages you. It's
Physically and
in low
psychologically.
quantities. It's yeah, in low quantities is literally like the safest pharmaceutical out there.
Hmm.
But then you have the whole other can of worms of addiction, and
The
and
abusive
the
addiction,
small
addiction.
quantity thing is a problem. Yeah, that's the problem with that. But yeah, no, like long term problems with these medications are definitely a thing. But for a
Well,
lot
we're
of these
seeing a lot of
guys,
it everywhere with as far as pharmaceuticals go. I mean, between the opioid crisis, which I know you were think is a big problem in your industry, and even drug pricing, like drugs that people need are real expensive. Drugs people
yeah,
don't need are real cheap, but they get people hooked on them. It's like
yeah,
the wild west in the pharmaceutical industry right now,
it
and I don't know
is.
how it got there.
Well, it got there by I don't know which company it was that basically started producing the OxyContin,
Oh,
but they promoted it as non-addictive,
did
and
actually? Did you see the pharmacist on Netflix? There's a really interesting documentary about
I
this
didn't.
guy who lost his kid to a drug deal gone wrong. Kid got shot, and
Oh
then it
wow,
turned out that as he was investigating this, he stumbled across this doctor that was prescribing OxyContin to people left, right, and center, and using it to kind of make money for herself, like a little pill farm. And
yep,
what I don't remember the name of the country or company. I am going to look it up right now, but it was a big story.
yeah,
And this guy kind of helped the DA in Louisiana take down this giant pharmaceutical company and this
wow,
doctor just based on like dogged determination. Guy's kind of my hero. I love him a little bit.
nice. So, but now I can go on to what's wrong with the mental health industry. um, so, like I said, you get the certain personality types, and in practice, they want to do the right thing. They want to help people, um, but the reality is you can't help everyone.
No.
And I've run into a lot of people that don't want to be helped, yet somehow get pushed into our agency or other programs, and they just, I mean, I hate to say it, they cause problems because they want to get kicked out.
I could see
And
that.
like, What I've experienced is, there's a big homeless problem with mental health, which I think is fairly common knowledge, but in case it's not, everybody should know.
It's a thing.
Homelessness and mental health are pretty intricately linked,
Pretty high
especially in,
correlation ratio there.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I've seen this personally a couple of times where, oh, this person is going to be homeless. Let's put him over in this house.
But that's not
Well,
really a mental. I mean, perhaps they have a mental health issue, but I mean, that's not really the same thing. I mean, you can be homeless and just be homeless.
right. And I've run into that's one of the biggest problems in mental health is because of the lack of funding, because of the lack of qualified people. We also get paid about as much as a cashier at Walmart or somebody flipping burgers at McDonald's. Um, that doesn't help much either with stuff. But because of all those things, we end up really just strapped for trying to help everyone with nowhere near enough resources. And we get, in my personal experience, people that are dangerous for a certain setting put there because there's not another place for them to go, and an agency is just not willing to say, we can't help you.
That's incredibly messed up. It really is, like
So,
incredibly so.
um, so my thing is, yes, it sucks. I don't like seeing somebody who has no place to go get kicked out of the house that I work in. However, if that's a person that's, let's say, actively using drugs or sneaking prostitutes into the house or God knows how many other
Right.
dangerous things, um, I will say every time I have somebody who's actively using that gets moved into our residence, these are problems I see. And they're obvious problems that are going to happen. But, you know, people just decide, well, they have nowhere else to go, so we got to try and make do with here. And like, well, no, there are programs that specifically deal with this issue in the same city we work in. It's just not our agency.
That's really unfortunate. I mean,
So
you'd think
whether
at the very
it's
least you'd be able to. I hate to use the Harry Potter analogy, but you'd like to sorting hat people into the right house. You don't want to.
yes,
You don't want to put the schizophrenics in with the paranoid delusionals, or I don't really know how it works. It's probably offensive. I'm
those
sorry if it
those
is.
those actually would typically be the same group.
Oh, it's all
Most of the
right.
people that I've dealt with that have schizophrenia also are delusional and paranoid as well. Um,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Not all schizophrenics are paranoid. That's like a type of schizophrenia. But there's an argument to be made that we use the word schizophrenia to describe what is most likely multiple illnesses, and we just haven't figured them out yet.
Which is understandable. I mean, was it the DSM? I mean, that's getting updated constantly, and there was just a new edition put out a few years ago, so that doesn't really surprise me.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that new edition. Whew. Yeah, that new
Still
edition is
six
something
now,
else.
seven.
DSVM 5, they're working on 6, I believe.
But I mean, even if you look at because I think four came out when we were in either high school or college age, so that'd be about around the turn of the millennium, year
Yeah,
2000. Um, and that was significantly different from the one that we grew up under as children through the 80s and 90s. Like the
yeah,
three, I mean, some of the stuff in there would be considered highly offensive today, which is crazy to
yes,
think about
yes,
because
it
at
would.
that time it was cutting edge. That
And
that
it,
was the
and
forefront.
yep, and I'm sure what we're looking at now is going to be considered the same thing in 10 years from now. Um,
Oh, I'm
it's
sure, absolutely,
ever evolving. Will say we've become much more culturally sensitive.
absolutely.
Um, I can say on a personal note, I'm a very active vocal atheist and anti-theist. That's a very difficult thing to be in the mental health industry.
Why is
There's
that?
a lot of um, there's a lot of use for religion. Um,
I
I
understand that.
whether it's community, belonging, any umpteen number of different things. People use church. A lot of the, what do you call it, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and Narcotics Anonymous meetings are in churches. So it became a little weird for me at first when people started asking me, as a very vocal anti-theist, I can't be at work, but outside of work I am.
Right.
Um, like asking me for spiritual guidance. Like I can't do that, man. Like I can,
Yeah.
like you, I don't even know what religion you are. Like I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. There's so many different belief systems. Like I don't want to give you mine, but I don't know yours. So giving you spiritual advice is I think kind of foolish. Um, but
And
hey,
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's really, if this is a state-run program, that is kind of in direct violation of the separation of church and state as well.
um, we're luckily we're a not-for-profit agency, so like we can technically, you know, I guess I stay so far away from anything religious. I don't really even know what we can do religiously because I just refer that out to go talk to your preacher.
Probably.
Whoever your rabbi, priest, preacher, minister, go talk to them about that stuff. Like I don't wanna mess with your eternal soul or whatnot.
Probably wise. Probably
uh,
wise. But I mean, that is an interesting topic because you can see benefits to both sides to playing it very like, no, we're here to do it for mental health reasons. Here are the science-based reasons behind it. Whereas faith does have the ability to bring out certain things for certain people. Obviously, not
yeah,
for everybody.
yeah. I mean, I've seen religion do more harm than good. In all honesty, at least childhood religions in people that are severely hit with schizophrenia as they get older. The correlation that I've seen, I can't speak for causation. The more strict the religious upbringing, usually, like the more religiously focused the delusions and psychosis are focused.
Well, you draw on what you know. I mean, that's anything for anybody. It really seems
Yeah.
like. I mean, it's kind of human nature.
Yep.
It's so funny how all these different systems. I mean, so many of the things you've spoken about so far, you see reflected in other areas of society, be it politics, education. It's really really
Oh
crazy
yeah.
to think about.
I mean, mental health touches everyone. I mean, like I said, there's nobody that'll ever live a whole life and not be touched by it, whether themselves, a friend, or a family member. It's just too prevalent. Um,
Absolutely.
and I mean, and everybody has experienced anxiety or depression. You know, whether or not you've had an anxiety disorder or chronic depression or any other mental illnesses.
I don't.
Not necessarily the same, but I mean, everybody's experienced at least one of those for a period of time.
It's kind of like the silly '90s or early 2000s. Like, you ever been bummed out, man? Well,
Yeah.
everyone's been bummed out, man.
I don't remember what that's from, but I do remember it.
It could just be one of those Mandela effect things where it's like it sounds like something we knew.
Yeah, oh yeah. Could be. Um, but yeah, like I see a lot of mismanagement of resources, or I don't even know if it's mismanagement of resources, just people not being where they belong, man. Like if you're actively using drugs and you need to get sober and
It's
that's
a
what you
little
want to be
different.
doing,
That's a different ball game
that's
entirely.
right. That's where you should be. You shouldn't be like where I work in our house. Like it just shouldn't happen. Um, it's just we. That's the biggest thing I think that's wrong with mental health. Now, granted, it stems from lack of funding, lack of places, lack of this, that, and the other thing. Um, but I think it stems from lack of communication between agencies in the same city or state. Um, just because my agency can't help somebody who's actively using right now, well, there's 5 other agencies in the city. One of them probably can. Um, And that's where, like, the cynic in me wants to say, well, they're so focused on the building and the money that they need to make that they won't be willing to give them to the appropriate thing because they'd rather keep them inappropriately, make money off them.
I mean, it,
So, like I said,
it's hard not to look at things like that in the light of the current
yeah,
society when, you see our government giving out hundreds of billions of dollars to billionaires while everybody else is like struggling to make ends meet in a lot of cases. I mean, fortunately for you and I, our jobs have persisted through the terrible pandemic we're all undergoing, which is really
yeah,
highlighting a lot of these drains and deficiencies in the mental health system. I mean, all
oh
over the
yeah,
place. I mean, medical system in general, but the mental health system for
oh
sure.
we've never been well enough equipped in the past, and we're not likely to ever be in the future. This pandemic is undoubtedly going to cause some serious PTSD in a lot of people. And we're not equipped to handle what came before the pandemic, and we're going to be less equipped to handle it afterwards. Like, everyone that's working in the field is going to have to be trained on how to deal with the trauma of this pandemic.
Yeah, and it's not even just that. I mean, there are studies going on right now, and a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that the COVID-19 is causing mental issues with some people, like just straight up
Yeah,
cognition issues, which
yeah,
adds a whole nother layer to it. I mean, we're going to have
um,
millions of people infected by a virus that causes cognition deficiencies, and let's just say it's even 5% of that million people that get infected. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of people that are now going to rely on a super deficient mental health
yeah,
system.
yeah. And that's in this country. It's not going to be pretty.
No.
I don't like I said. I don't know what the answers are. But the one thing I could give a piece of advice for all of your listeners in the future, if you're ever having to deal with a mental health agency or a family member, is here's a very oddball question you probably never would have thought to ask, but I think it's a good indicator of things. Does the agency that you're working with give bonuses to their workers based on billing?
Is that an easy
And if
information
the
to find?
just ask outright.
Oh,
Tell them I mean, just you want to know that information. If it's a not for profit, they kind of have to tell you where the money goes anyway. It's a matter of
okay.
public knowledge. Um, but ask, because if a place is giving bonuses to their workers based on how much they bill for, I would go find somewhere else.
That's not a good
Them,
look.
their focus, that means their focus is on the money, not on the care.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's pretty ridiculous. I mean,
right.
that's a really good point because that's something like honestly, you say that, and as somebody who's handled mental health issues within my family and had to go through it myself, um, I've never ever thought to ask that. I mean, thankfully, I haven't had to deal with anybody that's had to deal with living in an inpatient mental health facility. But even just
Yeah.
looking at your provider, I mean, like what when you go to say your psychologist or your psychologists are the ones that can prescribe drugs, right?
That's
Psychiatrist.
psychiatrist. Yeah,
So when you go to
psychiatrist.
your psychiatrist and they're looking to prescribe drugs, I mean, if
So
they're giving bonuses to get certain ones, like, wouldn't you want to know that?
um,
So it makes sense to
I
me.
can't. They're psychiatrists are on a whole nother level. I think in general, I'm generalizing here, obviously, but most of them work for themselves.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So when you go, let's say you have like a severe issue with depression or anxiety or drug abuse or even like mild schizophrenia, bipolar, like anything, you go to your community mental health.
Hmm.
Because that's typically where people go. If you're not in an emergency situation, then you're going to be dealing with them through the ER, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
But I mean, basically, in general, like you say, you need help. The most affordable place you usually go is going to be a community mental health,
Yeah.
which is
So
what
in
I
that case,
think.
it'd be like a county. In my case, there was
Yeah,
Rensselaer County.
yeah, yeah. And for us, it's usually New Hampshire is a small state, and our population is really spread out. So instead of by county or city, we have 5 catch zones, is what it's called.
Okay.
And they're, the size of the catch zone is kind of based on the population and what they can handle. And we have 5 agencies, one for each zone. Now that's like a broad net. Then there's other agencies that do different things in there. But that's typically where you would go if, like, say you're having an argument with your wife and she says you need to get help or we're getting divorced type deal. Well, this is probably where you would end up going for
Right.
help. That's where you want to, like, therapy, talk therapy. That's where I would ask those questions. If you're actually seeing a psychiatrist, I wouldn't be too worried. The amount of education they have and the amount of money that they're making, they're not concerned with a bonus about, are they billing enough?
Good to know.
When you're talking about a counselor that's just going to be sitting across from you and who's making maybe 15 to at most $20 an hour, I'd ask them if they get bonuses based on how much they bill for. Because
Gotcha.
then that agency is focusing far more on how much they get done, not the quality of what they get done.
Which is an unfortunate side effect of what seems to be rampant capitalism.
Yes, I mean everything has been monetized.
Yeah, and
Um,
it really certain things, and I personally believe our health system in general. I mean, we could go down that route, but I don't want to. But
oh,
specifically
that's a rabbit hole.
specifically mental health in our society. Like right now, we have the police out there like playing judge and jury with people with mental health. You know, and
Yeah.
in some cases, sadly, executioner.
Yep.
We have judges handing out sentences to go to places like the one you work at. Like this guy
Yeah.
was found on drugs, but they were clearly, now he's going through withdrawal, so clearly he has some mental health issues. Let's put him in a group home or a facility for 90 days mandatory. That's not helping anybody. It's
No.
the wrong thing, and then they're doing it and they're getting these massive court fees. Or it's
Yeah.
crazy money,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's funny because I bet you the mental health industry makes a lot of money for certain industries, but doesn't see a lot of it at your level.
at our level now. Like I said, we have a very hard time holding employees at this level in mental health because, like I said, you could go to Walmart and sit behind a register and get paid as much. You don't have to deal with trauma. You don't have to get traumatized yourself because to a certain point, if you deal with enough of other people's trauma, you start to take it on your own.
Yeah,
Um,
you're seeing that in a lot of care professions, nursing, EMTs,
yeah,
even teachers. I mean, they're
yeah,
forcing teachers to go back to make $35,000 a year, while the people who are telling them to go back are sitting in studios making millions, and they're
yep.
not sending their kids back to school.
Nope, nope. I mean, I can't tell you how happy I am. My kid is too young for school right now because I wouldn't send them.
I
I don't
think that
care.
all the time. Like, man, I'm glad I don't have kids right now because, like, the
Yep.
the decisions that are being made with people that have children, like,
Yeah,
no.
it's gonna be the hit mental health is gonna have when the kids that are in like first, second, third grade get to adulthood is it's gonna be staggering.
That's the exact word I was thinking, my friend.
Yeah. Yep, it's gonna be staggering. Um, yeah, man. Like, I focus on you know who's taking care of you and why. Um, if you can find the people that are out there doing it because they really, really, really want to help, um, you're in a good place. But if you even think that you're seeing like just money signs on a place, ask the questions and be cynical.
You know
Don't.
what? That's really great advice, Jim. Like,
Yeah.
that's really, I mean, follow the money. It really is follow the money. See
Yeah.
if they're really behind it for you, or
Yep.
and advocating for you, or they just want to see them big dollar signs in their face. Because I mean, it
So,
is a lucrative. Look at all the self help books out there. I mean, it's a lucrative
yep.
field. I mean, it can be.
Yep. And I can say, like, at my level, and if you go to an agency, probably who you're going to talk to at that level, we're all there to help you. Well, I'm not. I'm there because I need a job. But like, most of the people that work at this level they're the type that just want to help. That's why they're in the industry and whatever else. But that doesn't mean that's what the agency's point is. So that's why, like, you wouldn't think you got to ask that question because it's kind of obvious the person that's sitting right in front of you is there to take care of you, but the person who's paying them, what is their objective in this? Um, and that's, I think, a question that gets missed by most people, if not everybody, because it's just not something you'd think to ask when you're in there for mental health.
No, that's really, really excellent. And
And until I've worked in the industry, I never would have thought of asking that question either. But now, if I ever need to go and get help again, because I have in the past, um, that's going to be one of my first things. Is like how are you paying your people?
no, that's
If you're not paying them good and you're incentivizing them to bill, and I'll find another place.
no, that's really, really super insightful, and I'm glad. I mean, that's kind of why I brought you on. People that know what they're talking about and see things that, as somebody who doesn't work in that field, that's something I would never see. And most of the people that are listening to it, I don't think they'd think about that either. So I'm it's awesome.
My hope is they never are in a position where they actually have to even ask the question. But if they are, ideally, but if they are, ask that question, man. Get the best help you can get. I guarantee you, the person sitting across from you, if you're at a community-based thing, they're there to help you. But that doesn't mean that the agency's focus is going to be on helping you as much as helping as many people as physically possible, as fast as possible.
McDonald's it all up. McDonald's this whole society, my man.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. Like that's actually what's wrong with mental health. I think right now is we've basically turned mental health into a fast food restaurant.
That is super messed up, and I think that's a really good place to end this conversation. You got a really good piece of advice and a really, really
Sounds
sad,
good.
scary image.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately,
So
but
I know you've got a new business venture you'd like to take a quick mention about. I think now's the time.
yeah, if anybody likes glass work, jewelry, pipes, or anything, hit up Dragonfire Glass. We're on Facebook right now, but I'll be expanding shortly. Um, yeah, cheap price. Hopefully, other people think what I'm doing is pretty. I think it is, but hey, who knows?
I've seen a couple of things online. I think it looks really cool. I really appreciate you coming on. I've got the link on the video. The link will be right in the show notes for that.
Awesome.
Jim Dragun, mental health counselor, cynic extraordinaire. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Pat. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, that's the end of the first recording of Yell at the World. Today we yelled about what's wrong with the mental health industry. Thank you for listening. Make sure you drop a like on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, whatever you listen on. You can also check out the website, www.yellattheworld.com. There's a nice little feed you can follow there. Get us right in your inbox every time a new episode drops. So thank you for listening to me and my guest, Jim Dragun, Yell at the World. I hope you decide to join your voice to the chorus as well. Have a great day.